Welcome back to You Can Homeschool. I'm Tracy Hagerman, the happy homeschooler, and I'm here once again with Pat Fenner from Breakthrough Homeschooling.
Right.
So, as a homeschooling parent, there are many hats that we wear throughout our day. But one of the things that our kids usually have access to when they're in public school or private school is a guidance counselor. And so that's another hat that we tend to wear as parents. And I know sometimes we don't feel qualified to, play that role. Maybe you do feel qualified, maybe you don't. So we're going to talk today about how to be your high schooler's ultimate guidance counselor. So Pat's going to get us started today.
Right. Well, I guess it's first of all, I just want to encourage parents. Well, something that I found out when my uh, our youngest daughter spent 2 years in public school, public high school, and what I discovered was one of the roles that I always thought guidance counselors handled was college. How to where to go to college and the college application process and all that stuff. And some kind of guidance, career tests or something like that to lead them in that what direction. But I discovered that not all schools have that. The school that she attended didn't. And when I talked to um, her, not her guidance counselor, but just her I don't even know what you call them.
Academic advisor, maybe?
Yeah, let's call that. Let's go there. She said that most schools don't. It depends on how how financially, endowed the school district is and how much they allow the schools to have that. So I want to just encourage you that if you decide to homeschool high school, don't assume that your child is going to be losing out on a guidance counselor and whatever that means to you. So that being said, we still know that our kids are going to need help, guidance, just kind of coaching, to decide how they, how they're going to pursue and what next steps they're going to take after high school. And not necessarily college, could be career, could be a gap year. I mean, there's a lot of different options that we can offer our teens, and that you can do this, Mom. You can do this. So I think before we start, it's really important for you to know for yourself, because we're always talking about, right, how homeschools look different for, different families, even in different stages in the same family. Um, Stop and think about, maybe have a conversation with your spouse. What kind of services would you, in a perfect world, would you want your child to have? Do you think your child could utilize and that you want to offer your teen in the high school years? And start with that first of all. I don't know. Do you have anything kind of foundational to add to that, Tracy?
I'm ditto.
Yeah.
Ditto, Pat. It's
Yeah.
like, seriously, I totally feel the exact same way you do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So and once you've gotten that, I'll share what I feel are some common services that guidance counselors offer. Of course, obviously the first one I think that most people think of is college college counseling. How do I pick a school? How do I do financial aid? How do I do all the things? How do I know what major to pursue? um, how do I fill out the applications? All those things. And those are really easy questions to answer. Like, you really don't need, it's not rocket science. It will take a little investigation on your part, but it'll take mostly things that you can ask your teen. Like, you can coach her. We had an episode about coaching, and you can use this skill on your teen. Uh, and I don't mean to sound that in a manipulative way, but in a way that'll serve her or him to discover what they want to do and what they want to pursue. I'm going to attach a post that I wrote about this topic with some good reference books that you could use with questions and all these things, and helps for moms and dads to be a good guidance counselor. But you can talk your student through what kind of job interests they have. You can do personality tests. The 16 personalities is a great test to do. I'll have a link to that as well, because it does talk about your personality in terms of career. what careers, what general broad things. We're not putting anybody in boxes here. We're trying to just give some kind of guidance, and nothing is carved in stone. So don't ever worry about any advice that you give is like the last word. Which you may be laughing because like what teen takes our word as the last word, right?
And the thing I just wanted to add, Pat, is that sometimes when we're doing this, we're like, we're like, what's the goal? What's the destination? I know I do that because
Mhm.
that's how my brain works.
Yep.
But always, I was telling my kids that don't worry if you head in a certain direction and it's not the right direction for you, you can always change it.
Yeah.
There's no harm, but it's just a way of taking steps forward
Hmm.
to
I
figuring out what you should do.
Absolutely. Just what's the next right step? That's all you
Mhm.
have to figure out is the next right step. And I think what happens, I was thinking back in preparation of this episode, thinking about, when I was getting ready to go to college. And I think what happens is as a teenager, we look at adults at the other end of the journey, okay, and see how they have it all together, and some, certainly when we were growing up, like there were our parents had built careers doing things. Like people stayed with a business for 20, 30, 40 years, their whole lifetime, which is so different than now.
Mhm.
People don't do that. But we looked at these adults and realized that they may have been working for years and years in a career and felt like it was a one-time decision and we had to do it now, and not realizing that that we don't even know all the journey that they went to, and our parents might not have even remembered some of the you know crises, questions that they felt at the time stage that we were in. So it is important to let your teen, you remind them of that nothing's carved in stone. It's just the next step. You can always pivot, I guess, is the trendy word to use these days. But it's true. And I love that word. It's a great word. So that's important to know that. It's also important to know that you don't always have to be right as the guidance counselor. It's not that what you say goes. It's, hey, maybe these are some things to think about. Let's try this. Let's see what happens when you do this. Let's look into that. Let's talk about this. And it's not that you have the answers, it's that you're helping them to see what their answers are. Now you might have ideas because your kids very well, and you're like, wow, you have a real gift for raising plants. You should think of something with horticulture. It's something that I'm just learning now these days. How to not kill a house plant.
Get a plastic one, Pat. That's my
And
advice.
there you go. There you go. Okay, well, let's just use this as an illustration. Anyway, but so those kind of things, help your teen look at their gifts and strengths and stuff. So that's how you get started, I think, with it. I don't know. You got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I kind of think of it on four kind of things that you work with them. So
Mhm.
one is the academic, what are the types of courses they
Right.
want to pursue right now, like, you know,
Mhm.
as they're choosing their courses for the next semester or whatever. And then looking forward at what are the types of careers that appeal to them,
Mhm.
just in general, maybe it's in the medical field. So just looking at different fields is one
Mhm.
thing I would sort of walk my kids through. Like there's jobs in this. And that's an easy way to do that is just to, I would just take a university, go online, look up any university and look at
Mhm.
the different departments.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
so that's one thing. And then their personal development.
Mhm.
So, one thing we'll be talking about in another episode is public speaking. And so this is a skill that I think's really needed. And
Mhm.
so how can you guide your youth towards certain personal skills that will help them in the business world? And then fourthly, emotional support, huge. How do you provide emotional support? So those are the sort of the four caveats that I would focus on when I'm intentionally trying to guide them
Mhm.
towards, uh, their future.
Right. And so you have a benefit that I mean, school guidance counselors have, as a you as a parent have a benefit that career guidance counselors don't have, and that's the emotional support, which really undergirds all this. You really don't want a stranger providing emotional support with to your teen, because that can get messy.
Mhm.
But you have that as a parent. Additionally, you really know them. You know, your guidance count your teen's guidance counselor might be able to give them, for example, a career test, or a personality test or something like that, and then look at all the results. But they have no context for that, for reading that text for that test and applying those results. You can give that very same test and get the results, and you have a context, gee, this doesn't really sound right, maybe you were having a bad day. We can, some of these tests are free and you can do them online. You can redo them if your teens had a bad day and maybe just wasn't into it or whatever and didn't answer honestly or whatever. But you can go into that with those tests and knowing your teen and say, well, maybe let's talk about this, or this was a surprising result, what do you think about that, that a guidance counselor couldn't do anyway. So those are important distinctions to keep in mind when you're feeling inadequate, because you're not.
And I think that's the essence the, of homeschooling is that
Mm-hmm.
added benefit, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, and not only added benefit, but you've seen them develop and change, and you've seen what your child naturally avoids and
Mm-hmm.
naturally resonates towards. So absolutely, that's half of it. Just getting to
Mm-hmm.
know that child and their strengths and weaknesses.
Absolutely. And we've also talked about getting to know your child's learning method, how their learning style over the years. That's certainly something that's applicable to their career choice moving forward, or their major, their field of study. Um, the other thing too is, so okay, so that's good if we're talking about kind of heading towards college, right, and studies and things like that. Suppose your student's not college bound. How do you serve them as to counsel them to, be as a guidance counselor if they're not college bound? And I'd say a lot of those same things apply. Um, you could, like Tracy was talking about, just knowing what kind of in general fields you could pursue. Uh, and if they're not ready or not really sold on the idea enough to go to college, we'll see if you can get, an apprenticeship or volunteer for, certain hours a week, or just even go interview. Like they like animals, they might want to be a vet, but they're not ready to commit to college, because that's a lot of college, a lot of school. uh, go, find somebody at church who's a vet, or just, go to the vet maybe that you use if you have pets, or certainly if you call a vet up in the community, most career people are willing to talk to a teenager. It's just an hour or two. It's not going to be a
Mhm.
long thing. Um, and they can just kind of get an idea, ask them kind of questions, what's involved, what kind of preparation how did you know you wanted to be a vet? Just because I like pets or animals doesn't mean I necessarily want to be a vet, kind of thing. So you can really help them explore careers uh, now, even if they're not college bound right now. They might decide on something, become an apprentice, and decide, okay, yeah, no, I do want to pursue further schooling for this in a year or two. And they've had job experience in the meantime as well. The other thing for college, for non-college, for career-bound students right away, are talking about soft skills. And we talked about these actually in an episode when we were talking about homeschool moms finding jobs, and careers after their career as home educators was wrapped up. And soft skills are skills that are not something easily trained academically in an academic environment. A lot of them personality traits, work ethic. Let's see, what are some of the interpersonal skills, being able to deal with conflict, those kind of things are soft skills that are in need in the workforce, period, anywhere. And if your child is kind of more career oriented right now, work on those too, and to prepare them for whatever they'll be doing.
When you're talking about interviewing people, one of the things I did to make it intentional that we would actually take the time to do that
Mm-hmm.
is I had them do interviewing as part of a writing assignment. And then they also had to put together a little newsletter. So they collected their interviews over the year, and at the end of the year they compiled this newspaper. And some of it was, some of their poetry and stuff, but some of it was a little synopsis of different people they had interviewed. And so because it was part of their curriculum that they were doing, we actually did that. And over a couple years, especially my youngest daughter, because she really had no idea what she wanted to do. And my other two seemed really clear. So she was always like, what should I do? And I'm like, it's okay. Like it will figure itself out, but we can be a bit intentional. So she, she did do that. She interviewed a teacher. She interviewed a paramedic. She interviewed an entrepreneur. Those are the three that stick out in my mind. And so again, she came back from that and talked about the things that she really liked about what they spoke about, that she felt fit her and her interests, and the things that didn't interest her about those particular jobs. So over time, she never knew exactly what she was going to do, but she ended up with a business degree, which opened up, so many opportunities. But I know it was from those interviews that it helped, guide her. So,
and that could be an elective. So like you said, you had that part of your actually your study program. You can do that and call that, you spend the whole year helping your teen, a whole year exploring all these options, and making it part of the program will kind of ensure that it gets done. Because if it's something you're just going to say, well, let's try this, but not make it, they have to see some kind of short-term benefit too. And the short-term benefit at that age is it's a credit to help me graduate. So, you do that.
The other thing to hone it down is, especially if your child really is wide, like they don't have a good concept, is we would go through and say, okay, let's look at the things that don't interest you.
Oh, yes.
So, like I know for myself growing up, I wasn't interested in anything medical. I don't know why. I had this thing where I think it's awesome that nurses and doctors and everything they do, they take care of people. But I was like, I want to be around people who aren't sick. I want to be around people who are well. And I mean, it was just a personal preference. And when my son was hospitalized, don't get me wrong, I was, wow, those nurses especially, I just was blown away by their acts of service. And then have to go home and, serve their families. But in knowing that the medical field for me was not something that interests me, I was not drawn to, I could put a huge X through all of that, and it helped, again, orient me to another place.
That is so important, like to know what it's as important, I think, to know what you don't want to do as what you do want to do. Because even if we don't use the particular words and tell our kids this, they get this message, that you can do anything you want. You can be anything you want. And golly, that is overwhelming. It doesn't help, because God hasn't wired us to do anything and everything, and that's good, because I would fail miserably in a medical situation. I do, we do short-term rentals, and we've hosted traveling nurses, and it is, I think that's amazing what nurses and doctors do, but I can't, that's not me, at all. And it does kind of, lift a burden, to give them some breathing room, to know that there are certain fields that, okay, we're just going to block that off right now, because, for whatever reason, and you can talk about that, we're not going to go there. They may go back to it years down the road, who knows? But right now is what we're dealing with. And right now it's not going to work. And so let's just leave that and try to explore things that we do have an interest in.
One of the things we'd also do is we'd let them in their spare time, like pursue different things. And then always talking about what do they like about it, what's working, what's not working. Like my youngest daughter started teaching music to a neighbor of ours when she was 11. And it was because a neighbor approached her. But in that, she realized that she loves music, and she's very good at lesson planning. And so over time she found that teaching might be something she'd want to pursue.
Hmm.
And it's something she sort of does now as she had to pivot with COVID. She's
Right.
gotten back more into teaching music and that. So again, it's letting them decide and try it out. And she had always said like she prefers performing than teaching, but again, it was able to open up her skills to, you know, a different avenue because we that word, like you said today, is pivot. Oh,
Mhm.
that is just ongoing. The world we live in,
Hmm.
kids
I
have
think
to
that's
just pivot and
also
pivot.
going to be a characteristic of a successful adult in the future. Like you said, we're living in it now, but I think we're really becoming aware that that really our culture, our society is fluid, and the best thing we can teach our kids is to how to roll with it. Because being kind of, now I'm not talking about ethics or morals, I'm talking about career choices and using your gifts and talents. So I just want to just want to put that out there. Those things, there are businesses now that that I didn't even dream about when I was in college. And that was quite a while ago, I will admit. But our I don't know, the speed of life just seems to be going faster, and things change so much quicker than they did. So who knows, even like in 5 years or 10 years, I don't even know how to project what things will be available. So if our kids learn how to do that, be able to pivot, keep an idea of what they like about things and what they don't like about things, gives them options without telling them you can do anything, you can be anything, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
because knowing that you have an option is a kind of frees you up. But just being like in a wide space with no kind of boundaries or no kind of guidance or no restrictions, that's overwhelming. That's immobilizing,
Hmm.
really.
And getting back to the other thing about we were talking about emotional support. So
Hmm.
how do you do that? Like that's always a question. Parents like I want to be there for them. And sometimes I know we struggle with this in the teens. Like they can be very opinionated, and they think sometimes, okay, mom, yeah, mom, you know, in your day you did that, but in our day, so I think a lot of it also has to do with asking them a lot of questions,
Hmm.
like where do you see yourself in 5 years, or what kinds of grades do different colleges require? You can ask them that question. They'll look at you like, oh, I don't know. You know, like you want to get into engineering or something, and they're like, well, let's find out. You know, but it's asking them the questions. How should I study for, maybe there's an entrance exam they have to do for something. Maybe there's an aptitude test they have to do for something. So I find it's asking them a lot of the questions. You know, what what forms do they need to put into university? And as a homeschooler, that
Hmm.
was a big thing for us because they didn't have an actual transcript in our case. So it was like, okay, where do you want to go or what do you want to do? But again, I just put questions out to them, not to overwhelm them, but to put the onus on them. But it's asking them those right questions.
Hmm.
And it's very easy to do. You can Google anything and say, great questions for guidance counselor, school guidance counselor, and they'll come up with a list of 20 questions. And that's what I would do. I just kind of thinking, okay, what are some of the things I should ask them? I'm not
Hmm.
even sure. So I'd Google that and then just in a conversation have that conversation. So over time, they knew that, okay, I want to go to this school. These are the courses. These are the things I need to do to prepare. These are things these are some of the skills I should be looking at.
Hmm.
Again, but just that emotional support of asking the questions, letting them come up with the answers, and then being positive that they're working towards that, and also
Hmm.
reassuring them that, hey, this year is going great. You don't know exactly what you want to do, but here are some of your skills, and trying to identify and point out some of their skills
Hmm.
um,
Being
for them.
encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah,
What
encouraging.
what is that 7-to-1 rule? For every one negative thing you say, follow it up with 7 positive. I think the
Yeah.
important thing too, I so agree with the questions, because sometimes, our kids, well, obviously just due to lack of experience, they don't always know even what questions to ask. You don't know what you don't know, kind of thing. But the important thing with question, and I'm sharing this because I've had my more than my fair share of uh, messing this one up, is to listen without judgment. If you ask them a question and either they don't know the answer, or uh, or like, say, financial aid, and you ask them, well, how you're not going to have quite enough money. What do we need to do? What does the college require, or whatever? And like, in the States, we have the FAFSA form, and they may not even know about that. And so if you're asking them, they're like, well, don't worry about that. They'll help me when I get into school. That's not the right answer, but they have to fill out a FAFSA. You have to fill out a FAFSA. And so, but you want to you don't want to be very negative in your responses, and you want to try to
Mhm.
be open-minded and encouraging, and really watch, because this is a fragile time for them. It doesn't matter if they're putting up a tough front, and maybe your sons might be doing that, or if you have oldest children, often do that, like, hey, I got this, I don't need your help, kind of thing. But
Mhm.
it is a fragile time for them. They're trying to figure out, what's this adulting thing, and
Mhm.
how do I manage it? And that, like you point out, Tracy, that's where a lot of the emotional support comes in. Um, and and I just kind of want to reiterate too, that many of the things that Tracy and I are talking about today, a guidance counselor at a school wouldn't be doing with them anyway, because they
Mhm.
have tons of kids that they're going to be responsible for, and they don't have the time. They may have the heart, and they may know some of the tools to use, and and things to do, but just, there's only so many hours in a day, and there's only so much that they can, so many ways they can serve their all the kids that they're assigned. So you really do have a benefit, and you really can offer superior services to your kids than a guidance counselor could at school. So this is really something that can be real exciting to embrace. And actually, while you're talking to Tracy, I wish, I don't remember the service, but for one of our kids, there was a service put together. It's a homeschool couple who did this together, and they had something like 8 kids they put through school in college, and now run the service that helps moms and dads connect colleges. They help answer questions about the FAFSA. It's super helpful. You can sign up for, like, 4 years, so use it the whole time. They have checklists for what your kids should be doing, like, each year, in terms of preparing for college or career. Or you can just do it, for 1 year, or however. They're very flexible, but they get homeschoolers, is what
Mhm.
the point is. And they're not doing it from the viewpoint of trying to recreate a public school guidance counseling experience at home. They know the benefits that homeschool parents have, and help us utilize them to help our kids. So I will put the link to that in the show notes. But I'm just blanking out right now on the name of that program. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Getting help with that is awesome. One of the other things that we really considered with our children is whether they wanted, like, the more traditional, you get a job with the benefits,
Hmm.
set hours, set salary, or whether they want to be an entrepreneur.
Mm.
And that, I think, is a huge decision, because I know my son, he has a million and one ideas, and he works on projects, and as soon as he's done work, he's working on projects. So originally he said, he wanted to build his own, online game or whatever, but we encouraged him, get yourself a paid position
Hmm.
and work on it on the side, so you don't have that extra burden of trying things, because he is less of a risk taker. His
Mm.
personality is less of a risk taker. So knowing that, we knew it was important for him to have, some guaranteed income, and he could work on stuff on the side. And that has worked out beautifully for him, because he works in research and development for a high-tech corporation.
Oh.
So the stuff he gets to work on is, up and coming things, ideas for future products, not. So he loves it. He has a great salary. And then he also has a number of things that he's been doing on the side. But but he really enjoys those side projects because he doesn't feel this financial
Right.
burden of I've got to make this work in this
Mhm.
amount of time. So it's worked really well, but knowing that he's not as much of a risk taker, that was a good fit for him.
Oh, that's crucial for entrepreneurs because entrepreneurs are generally speaking very high on the risk-taking scale.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
doesn't scare them or phase them at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And sometimes too, your student might be starting a job or not a job business, doing something on the side or a hobby or whatever that's really blossomed that you that they could go into that. A lot of homeschool students, aren't only able to work at a job, but create their own services or products or things like that. And because we have the time and flexibility at home. So, and you can kind of tell, if your student, if your tween or even younger is more into risk taking, that might be something that you can kind of see in your head. Maybe they might be an entrepreneur. Maybe, they're really creative. They love trying new things. They're not afraid of and that's something you can develop over the years, way before high school, way before this is an issue of what am I going to do after I graduate? And so that might be something to encourage, but there's a lot of, and I even think for moms, the activity of homeschooling is very entrepreneurial and lends itself to that. So yeah, that's definitely another road they can follow.
Yeah. And then I think about my youngest. She wanted to have her job that she enjoyed. She wanted, but after that, she didn't want to think about it when she left work. She didn't want to have these
Mhm.
extra things to do that an entrepreneur usually has. So
Yeah.
that works really well for her. She loves
Hmm.
her job, but as soon as she leaves, she's got all her freedom, doesn't have to think about it. She can just put it away in her brain. And so that I think that's a huge thing to think about with your kids,
Hmm.
and to sort of question what's their comfort zone. Asking them how do you foresee your life going?
Yeah.
Do you want a 9 to 5, or do you want more flexibility? And then I've got my middle daughter who, like I said, she's a singer songwriter, and she sets her own hours now. She teaches. She had to pivot, so she teaches. She set up her own courses, and she's extremely entrepreneurial. And
Hmm.
and she's okay with not quite knowing exactly how much money she's going to make at any one time, but she budgets and somehow works out and loves the lifestyle.
Right.
So
Yeah. So our oldest son went to college actually to become a history teacher because he really loved history. But I kind of questioned it. I mean, I would say things a little bit when he started and but just kind of pulled back after a while. But he was never very academic. He was always very hands-on, high risk. It didn't bother him. He liked trying different things and doing different things. And he got to his final semester, and decided, who I can't do this. And we discovered this final semester, what he had been doing on the side while he was in college was buying camera equipment and teaching himself how to do videography, and had actually started working for people. We didn't know this. He went away to school. So by the time he graduated, he used his last loan amount. He got student loans too. And he to buy this really expensive camera because he realized, this is what I'm doing. I'm not going to be a history teacher. I'm going to be a videographer. And he got himself all set up. And that's what he continued. He feeds his family on that. They have one child and another one on the way. And he's a professional videographer. He loves what he does. He works with some great people. He travels, a little bit too. And uh, that was his thing. So he definitely pivoted. He realized he had to go through the college thing to realize, this isn't for me. Um, but he's successful. So you don't really ever know, how things are going to go.
So I think overall, when you're looking at this as a parent, you don't have to be overly concerned because,
Right.
like I said, they're natural gifts and that will come out. But I think you do have to be intentional about asking them the right questions, and allowing it to change.
Right.
So I think it's an awesome responsibility, but it's such a pleasure when you see them
Yeah.
flourish.
Yes. Oh, it is.
And so I really think that as homeschoolers, I think it's so much easier than, like you said, the guidance counselor in the school, because
Mm-hmm.
we have a vested interest,
Yeah.
in our children, becoming, contributors to society and being happy in that. So
And the
to me, it was a fun thing to pursue with them and talk about and see their
Mhm.
potential and gently guide them along. So
Right. And we get the privilege of getting a front row seat to this.
yeah,
We see it happening in real time. And there will be times that this is frustrating because the life, you know, but it is wonderful to see them bloom and blossom. So I will actually be incorporating, we're going to have extended show notes for this episode. I'll have the link to the show notes actually in the description to this podcast, but yeah, you can find them at breakthroughhomeschooling.com/guidance counselor. And you can get all our, a little bit summary of our conversation and all the resources that we talked about here today for that. So hope you found this episode encouraging. We certainly, Tracy and I had between us 8 kids that we, got through school and launched 7 of them. I still have 1 in high school. So this can be a process that can be gratifying and beneficial to you and your kids and your family. So thank you for
remember
listening. And
and
remember,
remember, you can homeschool. You can be an awesome guidance counselor. So enjoy your time with your kids. Bye bye.
that's take care. Have a good week, everybody.